Welcome to Valley Newsline for the week of November 12th, 2006. Hello, I'm your host, Ron Whitlock. On the program today, Sam Freeman with the Political Science Department of University of Texas at Pan American, and Arturo Duran, the former member of the Bush administration. He was the 15th Commissioner of the International Boundary and Water Commission and resident of the city of El Paso. Both of you welcome to the program. Aaron Pena on his way from Austin as we speak, and he will be joining us for the third and fourth segments of this program, so stay tuned. Well, we're basically here to talk about what happened on Election Day, and McAllen Monitor says voters revolt against the GOP. In Cameron County, Coscos in a stunner. Carlos Coscos in his second attempt to unseat Gilberto Hinojosa, long-term Cameron County judge. Gilberto Hinojosa out, Carlos Coscos in. Coscos has agreed to be on the program next week, so stay tuned to this program on that particular occasion. Sam, Arturo, wow, what an election we had. Many Democrats took the position formerly held by incumbent Republicans. No Democrats, as incumbents, lost to Republican challengers. What does that tell both of you? Was Iraq the issue? Was Iraq the issue?
Well,
was immigration the issue? Was what the Republicans had done in immigration and build the fence along the border? Was that some of the issues in your opinion?
I think there's a combination of issues. I do believe that the war in Iraq was one of the main factors. For us down here on the border region, we're very concerned also about these immigration reforms. Of course, since we live on the border, we have family ties on both sides of the border. We depend economically from the side of the border, and I think those type of issues, have joined on this voting a pattern in a direction that the American people out there are not very happy, and I think we should listen to that, to that voice. And I think the Bush administration should listen. I think they're all listening, and I think they started making some changes, right away. So, but I do believe this it's been a big issue.
Now, Sam, Governor Bush, now President Bush, held his hand out to the Hispanic voter, brought them in, Tony Garza and others, into his administration in Austin, and now his administration in Washington. But there's been an attitude on the part of many in the political process that by virtue of what's been going on with immigration reform and how strident the Republican Party was in calling them illegal aliens and those kinds of things, it seemed to seethe things that we really don't want to think even exist in our society. But there's been a feeling that perhaps the Hispanic voter was abandoning what they had been doing, and that's moving into becoming a GOP voter, and that might have had an impact. Now, I know you and Arturo have looked at what happened from here to California, and what did you learn from that evaluation?
Well, I think the border issues were important in some congressional districts, and I think we especially see that in Arizona, where two incumbent Republicans, both of them very strongly anti-immigrant, wanting penalties, basically criminalizing immigrants who were here and not documented, supporters of the wall, they lost. And I think that the border issues played a lot with that. I think this was not so much an election that the Democrats won as it was an election that George Bush lost. I think in many respects it was a referendum on the Bush presidency in toto, the war playing a big part of that certainly. But this has been very much the gang that can't shoot at all. Not the gang that can't shoot straight, but the gang that can't shoot at all, well, except for killing Iraqis, of course. But on almost every major issue that's come up in the Bush administration since 9/11, the administration, either George Bush himself or members of the administration, they've bungled it. Katrina being, one of the obvious examples of that. The tax cuts have proven to be a huge disaster, they have gone overwhelmingly to the rich, which is what the analysts at the time said would be the case, and now we know from the data is the case. That's adding tremendously to our deficit. We're going to be pushing, by the time he leaves office, a $1 trillion deficit. We're running up a deficit in Iraq alone at $1.5 billion a week. This is doing irreparable damage to the American economy, and I think the American people are beginning to figure it out.
So 2 of the 30-plus seats that the Democrats took away from the GOP, as far as that ledger to get control of the U.S. House, U.S. Congress, Arturo, came from a couple who represent districts bordering Mexico in Arizona, at least in that region, who were somewhat anti-immigrant and anti-guest worker.
Yes, Ron, and what I believe here with the recent changes also in Mexico, with President-elect Calderon, I believe that in the changes in the House are going to be very positive in improving our relationship with Mexico. I do believe that, and we heard the President today, that he believes that he'll get a lot more results on a more comprehensive immigration reform with the new changes in the House than what he was able to achieve, previously during a Republican-dominated, Congress.
So this could be a good thing as it relates to CAFTA, NAFTA, the improved relationship with Mexico, which seemed to be going somewhat sideways with the discussion of building the fence, wall, separating of these two nations all the way from California to Brownsville.
I agree, Ron. If you go back, when we started talking about trade agreements with Mexico, basically it was accomplished during Clinton era, and that basically is an indication that the Democrat congressional leadership will be more receptive to these type of initiatives, international trade initiatives with Mexico, and I think the immigration reform is something that I think is going to come up as one of the top priorities.
Now, you received 2 presidential appointments from President Clinton. As a Democrat before you became a Republican, you received 3 appointments from President Bush, the current sitting President Bush. Now, so this gives you somewhat a very good perspective as it relates especially to our relationship with Mexico, because you appeared as a member of the Binational Commission with the entire cabinet of Mexico and the entire cabinet of the U.S., meeting in Bank, made several presentations of this group. So you're here telling us that you think just this change of the House to the Democratic Party in of itself is going to give Bush a little bit of support in what he needs to try and improve his relationship with Mexico, which was doing very well until his own party differed with him on guest worker and other issues.
I agree, Ron. One of the things that I had as a vision, and and I was here in your show previously talking about the border region and economic initiative, and one of the things that we that I mentioned at the time was that I believed of having a border region united on both sides of the border.
Now, for decades, everyone along the border had 2 checkpoints. If you're going south, had a checkpoint 25, 30 miles going into Mexico. You had a checkpoint going north. That was our checkpoints. Otherwise, it was basically come on over and shop, going either way, going into Mexico, coming in the United States. And that basically is what Commissioner Duran is here talking about. And that is to create a security zone where there's economic prosperity. That in and of itself would somewhat be combative as it relates to dealing with narco-terrorism and drug problems and drug lords and that sort of thing. Is that basically what you're here to talk about again?
Yes, Ron. I do believe that there's an incredible opportunity that we're missing by not having our some kind of a binational security zone on both sides of the border, and allow people that live in that zone to prosper, to interface with each other freely. Of course, you create an economic zone and you provide some of the other support, which is security, infrastructure.
Many of these family members, 40% of the people in Brownsville have family members in Matamoros.
I agree, and I think that we're separating ourselves and we're not maximizing our resources on the border region. And one of the things that I had in mind was to look at what we have on the border to offer on both sides, and being able to maximize it in a way that is positive, that we work in hand with Mexico.
Positive rather than negative.
Right, and I believe,
not punitive.
Correct, and I believe that we can achieve security. We can achieve security in this country by securing the economic zone. If we agree that it's 60 miles south and 60 miles north, or whatever that is, then we secure the zone.
Stack up 18 wheelers away from the border. And like Betty Flores, former mayor of Laredo, said, we are united at the border, meaning the Rio Grande, not divided at the Rio Grande. Make any sense, Sam?
Well, it does. I mean, we need to improve relations with Mexico in a number of ways, and I think they've suffered under President Bush, and I think part of that responsibility falls with President Bush himself. He has a penchant for trying to tell other people what they're supposed to do or what he wants them to do, and he's done that in Mexico. And when President Fox didn't go along with some of the orders or the instructions that he got from President Bush, relations between Mexico and the United States chilled almost immediately, and that was well before a lot of these border issues bubbled to the surface. We have an immigration problem. There's no question about that. We need to look at what the root causes of that problem are, and a huge part of that goes to the economic underdevelopment of Mexico. And a border security zone and a border economic development zone sounds very good and has a lot of promise, but at the same time, if we don't do something to address the economic problems of Mexico and Latin America, we're going to continue to have massive amounts of immigration coming into the United States. The other thing that we need to do is we need to have a sane immigration policy. Our immigration laws today are insane. They're a hodgepodge that have been tinkered with over a variety of years. We need comprehensive immigration reform, and I haven't seen anything from the Bush administration that I think, from George Bush or anybody else, that I think is genuinely positive. And the depressing thing is I haven't seen anything from the Democrats either that I think is genuinely positive. I think in Washington, D.C., the vast majority of the people who are there do not have a clue as to what we need with respect to immigration reform and how we deal with the problems. And one of the things that's very interesting in all of this is we need to be planning for the future now, and we need to have a forward-looking, future-looking immigration policy. When the baby boomers retire, that is going to create a huge job vacuum in the United States. And we're going to do what we always have done when there's been a labor shortage in this country. We're going to open the borders and we're going to let immigrants in. We need to start planning for that right now, and I would say we even need to start letting immigrants into this country right now in preparation for the job shortages that are going to start occurring in about 10 to 12 years.
Commissioner Duran, your reaction?
No,
should we let immigrants in now in order to meet this job vacuum?
Well, they're coming in now. We just need to legalize a a lot going on.
With the guest worker, which is being promoted by President Bush and by Senator John Cornyn.
Let me give you there are some real examples for us to look at right now. If you look at Katrina, you look at all the work that needs to be done in Louisiana, and the large amount of labor that is required to perform those activities. Those people that are working in Louisiana are not natives from Louisiana. Okay, we are working right now in an incredible plan.
They're mainly of Mexican descent.
And that is a true statement as well, Ron. And right now, one of the biggest concerns that we have in El Paso is getting ready to move into a new direction for us. There are 25,000 soldiers that are coming back to Fort Bliss Base in El Paso. Right now, there are $5 billion worth of construction of activity that is going to take place in El Paso in the next 5 years. All the major top construction companies that are coming into El Paso to perform those jobs, their biggest concern is to say, where are we, if we get these contracts, where are we going to get the people? We got other things in El Paso taking place. We got new schools, we got roads, we got counties initiatives, city initiatives, and then you have this major activity in Fort Bliss. So everybody's looking at the labor shortage, and that is a real issue. It is a real issue for us.
There were $40,000 worth of cantaloupes that were plowed up in the Crin Miller Farm south of San Juan during the last harvest because they could not be harvested, where historically they were right there. Joining us on the set, Aaron Pena, the famous Aaron Pena. Thank you for joining us fresh off the highway from Austin, Texas. Aaron, give us a lay of the land. What is going on? We have Cameron County now voting for Kay Bailey Hutchison, voting for Rick Perry for governor, 2 Republicans, elected a new Republican county judge, first one since Tony Garza, Carlos Cascas, defeated Gilberto Hinojosa, who is trying to get his 4th term in the judge's post in Cameron County in Brownsville. We've also got, my goodness, Vela winning in the 13th Court of Appeals. Rose Vela, married to Philemon Vela Jr., corpus attorney, son of former federal judge Philemon Vela, and former Brownsville Mayor Blanca Vela. And she defeats from Brownsville, from Edinburgh, Fred Hinojosa, because it was a big turnout in the Nueces County area. So we've got some Republican activity in the lower part of South Texas. And what's going on? Are things changing?
Yes. Change is always occurring. It's a number of different factors. One is, for lack of a better word, the maturation of the electorate in the valley. Cameron County is always...
Does that mean La Palanca is becoming less popular?
Yes. Yes and no. Amongst Republicans, La Palanca is a very, very time-honored tradition. I mean, Republicans probably vote straight party ticket more than Democrats do. But you have 2 or 3 occurrences occurring. One is we're becoming a more prosperous valley. Cameron County has always trended to be a bit more conservative than Hidalgo County. Income levels are higher, education levels are a bit higher, but the valley has been successful. And the valley, as is the borderlands, is socially conservative. And so the Republican Party appeals to the social conservatives. The economic conservatives, as the valley develops a population that is making more money, is attracted to that. But also in this circumstance, you have a well-known last name. The Vela name is a well-established family in the valley, well-respected from Philemon Vela. You have
Democratic Party tradition.
Oh yes,
legacy within the Democratic
but also Corpus Christi. This district encompasses Corpus Christi and areas outside of Corpus Christi, and so those areas are trending conservative, and so these things are all coming together. And you also had a very clever advertising campaign. I perhaps shouldn't comment any further, but we have seen a maturation of the electorate, and this is a choice that we saw coming. We saw it coming as far back as when Judge Linda Yanez first, I think 2 cycles ago, was challenged by an unknown, and yet came very close to winning. And so in the Cameron County, Corpus Christi area, you may see these trends occurring. It doesn't necessarily mean that Texas is trending in that direction. As a matter of fact, in the Texas House of Representatives, Democrats picked up 5 seats, which is a continuation of picking up 1 seat last time. So these are different confluences of events, and in South Texas, especially along the Gulf Coast, you will see a conservative trend, but I'm not sure that it's going to remain so.
Does this bode bad for Chuy Hinojosa, who sits in the valley end of the district and yet has a constituency in Nueces County, Corpus Christi area?
Any elected official who has a constituency outside of the valley is going to have to deal with these different populations.
We took a poll on our valleynewsline.tv website. Should there be independent candidates? Half the voters said there should be independent candidates, and we had 2 in the governor's race.
Oh, well, everybody loves to have more choices. And so any time that the 2 parties are not responding to the entire electorate, you'll see independent candidates come forward. And so most people would say choice is good.
Republican Texas Governor Rick Perry was effervescent, is a good term I would say, when he was accepting the fact that he had been reelected. He will now be the longest sitting Texas governor in Texas history. Now, when you go back to Austin during the upcoming regular session, you're going to be serving with Rick Perry once again. And does this somewhat give him a mandate to a degree? I mean, he did come up with a pretty good number, 40%. He was trying to get 50, so he'd be a good vice presidential potential nominee for 2008.
Does it give him a mandate?
Put him in better stead than he might have been otherwise.
Well,
50% have been better than 40.
Let me just say this, okay? What you saw was a breaking up of the electorate. Rick Perry, the governor, essentially ran on his base, the conservative base. You can measure what the conservative base is by looking at Rick Perry's votes. Carol Keaton Rylander Strayhorn was essentially the moderate Republican wing of the Republican Party, and some of the conservative Democrats. Kinky Friedman was a bit of a protest vote. The intellectually, an intellectual vote. That's funny to say that at the same time that you say Kinky Friedman. But in areas like Austin,
while laughing,
in university towns,
right.
You may find that Kinky Friedman was somewhat followed. Whereas Chris Bell was a traditional Democratic base. And so you saw all the segments of the Texas electorate represented here. So to say, did Rick Perry have a mandate? He did from the conservative wing of the Republican Party. He did from, I think he was successful in attracting Hispanic conservatives and some moderates.
Sam, did Kinky and Carol Strayhorn cost Perry, or rather cost Chris Bell the governor's mansion?
No, I don't think so. I think if Strayhorn hadn't been in the race, that most of those votes that went to her would have gone to Perry. I don't think
would not have gone to Bell.
I don't think they would have gone to Chris Bell. As far as where the votes for Kinky Friedman would have gone, you know, I don't know. I mean, his whole candidacy was a joke and a fraud, and I don't understand how anybody who wanted to do anything other than simply...
You were not happy that Kinky Friedman ran?
Well, I wasn't happy that Kinky Friedman was using the Texas electoral system as a joke. I mean, he came to the University of Texas Pan American and he said, you know, I really don't know anything about higher education. And when we were talking, he said, the only thing I'm interested in is finding a good one-liner on higher education. And I think that sums up what his campaign was about.
Thank you, Sam, for coming and joining us. Thank you, Aaron, for coming and joining us. Thank you for joining us. Till next time here on Valley Newsline. Adios.